NXT starts off with Kelly Armstrong versus Jada Parker. This was a really solid match. Really enjoyed this match. This match ended up becoming a thing due to last week. Kelly Armstrong ended up approaching Jada Parker. They have a little back and forth, so this is why this match ended up happening. Really solid match. Kelly Armstrong does end up picking up the victory. Not gonna really go over too much of the match. There was nothing special that happened, but these women did have really good chemistry overall in the ring. After the match, though, we end up getting a segment between Jada Parker. She was frustrated, tearing down the women's locker room, tearing down the nameplates and everything, kicking the wooden like locker room area. She's very frustrated. She's tired of losing. She's very annoyed, angry that she keeps losing these big matches. Then we end up getting a moment where Natalya walks in, ends up saying that Jada Parker has lost her edge, that she's gotten soft, and then walks away. So right now it looks like they're going to be telling a redemption story with Jada Parker, with her trying to go back to her old ways, trying to find her way again, which I don't mind this story. I just don't know if I like Natalya being the one that's going to be teaching her this, because based off recent history, this doesn't go well when people are under Natalya's like influence or under like her leadership. This is just, now look, I don't really hate Natalya or nothing. I just don't have real hope for this because it's Natalya at the end of the day. And WWE has shown that whenever you're booked with Natalya, it doesn't really end well. So it just doesn't end well for the most part. So I'm not really going to I'm going to leave some type of faith here because I love Jada Parker. I just don't see where this is going to go. I can easily see this eventually turning into a heel turn, which I do think makes the most sense because as much as I like Jada Parker, she is better. She is better as a heel personally. Plus, Natalya, Natty is a heel, so it makes sense for Jada Parker to turn heel. Look, the idea can work. It really can, especially if the plan is to turn Jada Parker heel. My only question is with Natalya and her history, with her recent booking, I just don't know if this is really going to go to anywhere where it's going to actually lead to something. That's my only problem. But if this actually leads to Jada Parker turning heel, I think it could be really good, especially if they actually push her the way that a heel Jada Parker should be pushed, especially if you put her in that NXT champion picture, depending on if Lola Vice is champion, Kendall Gray potentially being champion, her being a heel to face either of those women. So I like the idea. It's just if they can execute it. That's my only issue with this. So I do hope eventually that, with this heel turn or whatever they're doing with Jada, this eventually leads to something. But maybe I just got to hold on a little bit because I hanged on for JC Jane. JC Jane was booked terribly for a very long time until last year, until they decided to give her that NXT Women's Championship. Same with Tatum Paxton for the longest time. She was very inconsistently booked. So maybe I just got to hold out on Jada Parker eventually being booked well. But this can be interesting. I just don't have no faith in it due to her being booked with Natalya of all people. But we'll see how this plays out. Hopefully, Shawn Michaels can execute it perfectly. Hopefully, this is executed well. But I'm going to leave a little bit of faith here. But like I said, the story itself can be interesting, but the execution is where I'm going to be a bit worried, but we'll see how this unfolds. Good victory for Kelly Armstrong. Not upset at all for Kelly winning this match. Makes perfect sense for Kelly to win this match. She's a new NXT call-up. They're really big on her. They're trying to build her up, so it makes perfect sense. I'm not really mad that Jada Parker lost. Well, I'm mad in the sense that she lost, but that's due to me just being a fan, not because I think it was a bad decision. It makes perfect sense for Kelly to win. I like what I've seen from Kelly from an in-ring perspective. I like kind of like the attitude she carries herself with. For her character, she kind of reminds me a bit of Jada Parker to a degree with the attitude she carries herself with. So very interested to see what they do with Callie, whether it's for the women's NXT championship or North American championship picture, or maybe they hold off on that and just continue to build her some wins and did eventually go for those titles down the road. So very interested to see what they do with her as well. We end up getting a quick vignette segment with Evil. He basically ends up calling his shot for the NXT championship, basically saying that he's going to shoot his shot. Eventually, he's going to become the new NXT champion. That basically he wants the NXT title. And his new name he's going under is Naraku, or Naraku. That's the new name, which is a very nostalgic name for me personally because he has the same name as one of my favorite anime characters of all time, which is an anime villain, Naraku. It was spelled the same way, just sounded different. So very interested to see how fans are going to react to this name, because every time when a new wrestler gets a new name that is known, everyone complains. They did it with Blake Monroe, Kevin Owens. Who else did they do this with? They do this with every wrestler that comes from the indies or whatever that people know. They change the name and people complain about it. Like, you're going to get used to it, okay? It's not a big of a deal. I actually like the name. Now, I'm a bit biased because, again, it's spelled the exact same way as one of my favorite anime villains ever. But very interested to see how people will react to the new name. And I'm very excited because he will make his in-ring debut next week. Very excited for this character, honestly. So His vignette segment, his vignette package was really good, really solid. So very interested to see how he looks in ring. Because if he could deliver in ring, hey, I'm cool with this overall. Because NXT needs some main event talent. If he could fill that role in a good way, I have no complaints here. So I'm very interested to see how Naraku, that's his name, Naraku, plays out in NXT. We end up getting a singles match between Jasper Troy, Jackson Drake. This was a very solid match. This ended up becoming a thing due to last week. Jackson Drake was hanging out with the Vanity Project. Jasper Troy interrupts them, and then he basically demands a match. This match was really solid. Towards the end of the match, though, you end up getting Nika Lockwood, if I'm not mistaken, that's her name. She interferes, attacks Jasper Troy when the ref wasn't looking. Then Jackson Drake ends up taking advantage and picks up the victory. So they're doing this new dynamic since Blake Monroe isn't on NXT anymore. They're doing this new dynamic with Nika Lockwood and Jackson Drake being a thing. And I don't mind this because I could see the appeal, and I actually am kind of liking it. Now, Nika Lockwood has a very unique build to her. Very interested to see how this plays out. I like the pairing. I do. It's crazy how this pairing started. It literally started off with them going on a blind date, and his blind date stood him up, and then Nika just injected herself, and then they end up dating, which is actually insane. But I'm actually interested in this pairing. This pairing can actually be it could be kind of similar to like I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it could be basically like a Eddie Guerrero China vibe, or it could be kind of like a Rhea Ripley Dominic Mysterio type thing. Not the exact same, but they could play on those relationships and add some similarities to that to make it work. So I'm actually interested in this pairing. I think this pairing can actually do very well, especially. Now I do hope that they don't have Nika be the reason why Jackson Drake wins every match. I hope that's not the route they're going. That's my only thing. You can have her be the reason why he wins some matches, but that shouldn't be the reason he wins every goddamn match. Do not do that. Make it to where, maybe 50% of the matches he wins because of her, but the other 50 is due to him just being that talented or due to him cheating some other way. But overall, very interested to see how this pairing plays out. And I like the overall finish to this match. Very interested to see how this pairing goes moving forward. Moving on, we end up getting a Zarya promo. Zarya ends up mentioning, that she's finally free. She finally has no one holding her down. She's no longer with Soul. Then she ends up mentioning what's next for her, and she wants the Women's North American Championship. She ends up mentioning that is the championship that started it all. That started, the friction, that started the betrayal, that started, the jealousy between her and Soul. And she is right. That is the championship that started it all, even though it ended with the NXT Championship, but it did start with the North American Championship with Soul getting injured. That was the first championship Soul won, if I'm not mistaken, being by Zarya being by Zarya being by Sol Ruka's side, supporting her, eventually defending the championship for Sol, only for her to lose it. I actually like the decision for them to actually have Zarya go after the Women's North American Championship, because she is right. That is the championship that started it all. Plus, I think this is the best case scenario for her, mainly because she's not beating Lola Vice, so don't put her in a situation where she's going to lose, where Tatum Paxley is more realistic, because Tatum Paxley been on the roster for a while now. She's been she can afford a loss, where Lola Vice is still new. Now, Tatum Paxley is still new to that championship, but she could afford more of a loss due to the history that she has in NXT. Plus, she's been an NXT champion, now North American champion. Plus, she just defeated Blake Monroe. Tatum could afford a loss more than Lola Vice right now, in my personal opinion. Now, afterwards, though, you end up getting Tatum Paxley. She comes out. Then you end up getting Lizzie Rain and Nikita Lyons comes out. They all make their claim for wanting to go after the Women's North American Championship. It leads to a brawl where Zarya stands tall. I like this so far. It's going to be a tag match next week. I think it's going to be Nikita Lyons and Zarya and Tatum Paxley and Lizzie Rain. Very interested to see how this plays out. Now, on this show, they end up having the champion getting pinned and Lola Vice. Curious to see if they're going to do that next week. I do like Lizzie Rain and Nikita getting an opportunity to showcase themselves being in this North American Women's title picture. But we all know who should be winning this title. It should be Zarya. It's been long overdue. It's time for Zarya to be that very dominant heel that she needs to be as North American Women's Champion. Don't know when it's going to happen, but the sooner the better. And I love Tatum Paxley. She's one of my favorites of all time, but I'm sorry, you got to lose. You got to lose. Whenever the match happens, she needs to lose, okay? She needs to lose. The match will be a banger, but she needs to lose that title. Give it up to Zarya. But very interested to see how this plays out. That tag match should be amazing next week, but very interested to see who wins that match, whether Zarya is pinning the champion or Zarya loses, because they could be telling a redemption story where she loses, she has to fight her way, and then eventually get to that get to the point where she could finally challenge Tatum Paxley, or they could immediately just give it to her right away. So very interested to see how this all unfolds. We end up getting a mixed tag team match between Lola Vice, Mystery Iguana versus The Calling with Izzy Dame and Nico. This was a solid match. Towards the end of the match, you end up getting Nico ended up doing like some type of like slam on the outside onto Mr. Iguana. He slammed it pretty hard. Lola Vice ended up looking on the outside, getting distracted. This allowed Izzy Dame to take advantage and to pick up the victory. So she ends up pinning Lola Vice, the NXT Women's Champion. So it looks like eventually Izzy Dame will probably be gifted an NXT Championship opportunity. That's typically how it goes. So very interested how this plays out. I've been liking what they've been doing with the whole Izzy and Lola Vice storyline so far. I just do hope that we don't get no more interruptions from The Calling and Mr. Iguana. I just think it should just be these two women. Personally, I like the first segment that they had, and then the second segment was cool. I do hope that we get another like back and forth where they're just them two in the ring cutting a promo, or maybe they just brawl, whatever. I do hope for the rest of this feud that we don't get no more The Calling and no more Mr. Iguana. I'm hoping that's the case, but I could be wrong. But nonetheless, this was a solid match. Very excited to see Izzy Dane challenging for the NXT Championship, so that should be really good. I love both these women. These women have been doing incredible work, so I am very interested to see how this eventually unfolds. I know Lola Vice is going to retain, but just putting Izzy Dane in this spot and have her have an actual program with her says a lot about how high they are on Izzy Dane. So this is a very good sign for her. Eventually down the road could eventually become NXT Women's Champion. Who knows? So very interested how this plays out, but this was an overall really solid match. I'm excited to see what's next. Moving on to a tag team match between Hank and Tank versus Dark State with Osiris and Cutler James. This was a really solid match. This match actually surprised me. I was not expecting this match to be as good as it was, but it was a really good match. Dark State did end up picking up the victory, which I was very surprised by because I thought they was going to tell the story of Dark State continuing to lose, and lose until eventually they break up. But they actually won this match. But after they won this match, when they were celebrating, Dion and Saquon was giving each other that look like they don't really mess with each other, because it was during the match where Dion tries to use a steel chair while the ref was distracted, but Saquon ends up stopping him. So eventually they will break up. The betrayal will happen. I'm just very interested to see, are they going to have Saquon be the babyface here? Because I like Saquon a lot. I really do. But I don't know if I want him to be a babyface. I kind of maybe want him to be like an anti-hero maybe, or like a tweener, because maybe he could play a great babyface, but he just does a good job as kind of like with Dion. Dion and Saquon are both just good heels, where I don't know if I would want either of them to be a babyface. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out. If I'm being honest, Saquon is definitely the villain here. I get why Saquon is mad, but some of the things Saquon is doing, I understand why Dion is frustrated, because I would be too. But nonetheless, very interested to see how this slow burn, this slow turn happens, whether it's Dion turning face or Saquon turning face. So very interested to see how that eventually unfolds. But very shocked that Dark State picked up the victory. We finally get the main event, Tony D'Angelo versus Tavion Heights. This match becomes a thing due to last week Tavion wanted to call his shot to go out to Tony D. He finally gets the opportunity. It wasn't for the NXT Championship though, but this was a really solid match. Tony D does pick up the victory due to some shenanigans. Later in the match, we end up getting Cam Hendricks, I think that's his name, interferes in the match. Then you'll be getting Miles Bourne takes out Cam Hendricks. Tavion is distracted. This allowed Tony D to pick up the victory. After the match, though, you end up getting a sign of respect between Tavion and Tony D. And then you end up getting the same guy who attacked Tony D'Angelo last week. I forgot his name. He said his name at the end of the show. I just forgot it. This big white guy comes out and then he attacks Tony D. I don't know how to feel about it. Look, I like the idea. I don't know if I like him specifically, but to be fair, I'm just going to give it a chance because I heard him talk for like 5 seconds and I was already immediately out. I was already out. Maybe he needs to talk a little bit more, but the 10 seconds that he talked, it was very uncharismatic. It was just, no, just please no. We'll see how this plays out. We'll see how eventually how this unfolds. Overall show was a good show. It was an overall good show. Even with the depleted roster of NXT, they continue to put on a really good show. You guys let me your overall thoughts and opinions down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my content. But yeah, that's it.